Well, hello, everybody. Today we have with us Kendra McGuire, who is the Superintendent of Schools for the Diocese of Covington. And Kendra, thanks for your time today.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
You bet. Well, we all know about, we've got public schools and private schools, and we have Catholic schools in our community. And the Diocese of Covington has a long history of education in grade school and high school, especially. You're now in charge of this group. How many students are you responsible for, and how many schools does this comprise?
So we have 37 schools in the Diocese of Covington. With 9 of those are high schools and the rest are elementary schools. We actually our schools are across 5 counties. So we are in Boone, Kenton, Campbell, and farther to the east, we have Mason and Harrison counties. Overall, with our student population, when we include our preschoolers, we have over 9,000 students that we serve.
Unbelievable. And so, Kendra, you also have, you've got 20 years, I guess, of education behind you, and or education, you've been in the education field for 20 years. You've also got a big brood yourself, is that right?
That is correct. So I've been serving in the diocese as teacher, principal, and now up to the superintendent. This has been 20 years for me, and I have my own children. So I have 6 children of my own, and we have a preschooler all the way through high school. So we have students across all grade levels.
So you obviously need to educate us all on how you don't sleep, all right?
Yeah, I think after the first one, that kind of goes away. So you get used to that.
God bless you. Well, so you're you've been in this role, and you're now responsible for the thousands of students and staff. You're dealing with COVID now. So walk us through some of the challenges at the beginning and how maybe that's evolved through this whole pandemic for you to really do the job of educating students.
Yes, we started, as everybody knows, almost a year. It's hard to believe we're coming up almost a year ago when our initial closure of schools. And it's been a long journey. It's been a journey where we have learned a lot. Initially, when we first started back in the spring, there were challenges with learning to do NTI with sometimes limited resources that our schools had. But over the summer, our staff, our principals, we really worked really hard to get our schools ready and to be back, to welcome students back in person. And we did that. We started back late August with the guidance from the Kentucky Department of Health and Kentucky Department of Education. They gave a great template and plans for how to bring students back into the classroom. It has worked wonderfully. So, we've been blessed to be in school for, gosh, now we're back here. We've probably been in person for 16 weeks and only out of school on NTI for about 3. So we're very happy with all of that and how that's gone. Our teachers, it's always a learning experience with the teachers. And I think throughout this pandemic, we are going to keep learning new things. So as we go along, we learn how to balance the students who have to be on NTI because of quarantines and or COVID cases, and how to make sure that we are trying to educate them the best we can under these circumstances.
But I'm sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, but overall, despite the challenges and the hard work and really how it has been challenging overall, I feel like that everybody has really done a good job. We've really worked hard to bring everybody in and to meet everyone's needs.
And so you've been kind of working through the policies, recommendations, and those things have evolved, right? Really week by week, month by month to some degree.
Oh my gosh, it feels sometimes day by day. Yes. So we worked really hard all summer to kind of take the guidance from the state and our local health departments, and we created kind of our own guidelines for returning to school. We put those out for our families right before school started, and we've had periodic updates all along with those. I think our most recent update was in December because there were quarantine changes to that came out with the CDC and the Kentucky Department of Health, and so we try to stay on top of all of the information that comes down and then make those changes as we can throughout our schools. I think one of the things we really strive to do is, because we have 37 schools across multiple counties, we really want to make sure that we are consistent, because one of the challenges with the pandemic has been sometimes some inconsistencies. And so we really want to try to be consistent for all our families across the schools, because we do have families who have students maybe at one of our high schools or one of our elementary schools, and or even maybe one of the preschools. So it's easier for them too if we can, follow consistent procedures across the board.
That's a great point. So talk a little bit about the idea, that this thing is about COVID. It's about people getting sick. What's been the experience between teachers, staff, or students? And maybe what have you kind of learned through this pandemic about that situation?
Well, I think when we started back to school initially, everybody was a little bit nervous because nobody really knew how it was going to go, or how how effective these mitigation strategies would be. But once we got into school, and we track every case, so every case gets called into a central place here for the diocese, and we monitor the cases and the quarantines and know when the students can come back. And what we learned through that whole process is that really these mitigation strategies in the schools work very well. So, what we have found is that the students and the staff, when they follow the protocols, when they're wearing the masks and they're maintaining the distances, those protocols that we put in place, they have been very effective in the schools. And because of that, we haven't really seen spread of COVID within the school day, which has been, fantastic and a great blessing to many of the families. And I think reassured them that, that schools can be a safe environment as long as we all work together to follow those protocols and keep everybody safe.
Absolutely. Well, and I'm sure in the challenges I think about this, you got to deal with. I mean, generally kids have been less impacted and keeping healthier through this, which is wonderful. But you've got teachers who range from very young to obviously maybe near retirement, and you're having to balance their own personal fears, which you're trying to be mindful of, right?
Yeah.
And dealing with that. So maybe speak to that a bit, because you've had to, I'm sure, work through some of those challenges.
Yes, and we definitely had, when we started the school year, we did experience quite a few teachers who were very nervous. Maybe they have underlying health conditions, or they are older themselves, and so they are those higher risk categories. And I think they also approached the year the same way we did. This is new. The pandemic is new to everyone. We've never experienced this before, and so even though we have all of these safety procedures, we didn't really know how they would work until we got in and got started. And it's still a concern. When we started the year, the cases in general were relatively low compared to where they are now. And so as the cases ramped up kind of in November and December, I think people's anxiety and worries ramped up as well. And so we do try to work to balance those out. Oftentimes we go back and refer to our data, that we have, what our data shows is that the teachers can stay safe, because if they too follow those, those protocols, that they really can effectively keep themselves safe when they're within those school walls. And we are really excited now because we are at a time where, we're starting to work with St. Elizabeth to schedule vaccination. So I think that's also giving some hope on the horizon that, that things are going to continue, hopefully, to improve, as we go through the rest of this school year.
So as you're planning for this, we're now sitting here in mid-January. There is spring break coming up, and I'm sure you've got decisions to make about how you're dealing with kids, because if kids typically go away for family events and things of that nature, that's always typically a little higher risk, right? But you've also got to support the fact that families have traditions and want to still live their life. So that's a huge balance that you've got to support there.
Yes, we do. And, travel has been a challenge for the entire year. So when we were coming back in August, we had families who had delayed vacations until late August, hoping that things would settle down with the pandemic. So we have had the travel challenge throughout the year. Early on, we changed our protocols or requirements for our families. And so it was actually just before Labor Day, we ended up following the Kentucky's guidance. So they had talked about recommending a 14-day quarantine when people travel to places where the COVID cases are higher. So what we did in our procedures is we put in place that we would require that to be a mandatory quarantine for our schools. Gotcha. It has been a challenge for families because I know they're struggling too, and sometimes they want that break and they feel like they need to get away from the pandemic. But we also want to make sure that we protect and keep everybody safe in school too. So if people choose those higher risk activities, which is okay for them and their families, they've been really working, cooperatively with us to make sure then that they just their students go to NTI, transition to NTI for the short time when they get back from the break, and that has worked well. So we have been in discussions about spring break as well, but we feel like with those procedures in place that have been in place throughout the year, that they will be effective in spring too. And we also know that our staff is probably going to need that break, when that time comes too.
Good point. Well, and that leads into the other point. I mean, you and all the superintendents and teachers really through the region have just got a thankless job. The bishop, obviously, and then your school boards, et cetera, and the region, just tough. You're not going to make everybody happy. You're not going to always make everybody happy. But on a side note, will there ever be snow days again where you just let kids go sledding and stuff?
I hope so. First we need snow, and this area, we haven't had a good snowstorm for a while, but we have learned a lot of valuable lessons through the pandemic, with this NTI and the options that are open to us. But hopefully through the midst of that, we can also still realize that we still need to enjoy life a little bit too.
Sure.
And hopefully in Kentucky, if northern Kentucky, that if we actually get a good snowstorm, that we can actually take that day off and let the kids play in the snow, I hope so.
Yep, snow and hot chocolate and wet boots are part of being a kid, right?
It is. And, one of the things we learned during this pandemic is that we need to find things to boost our spirits and bring some positivity back into our lives, because there seems like there's just a lot of negativity. So I think that would bring another opportunity for that too. So.
Well, before I ask my last question, I've got to just tell you, I think that everybody's got to have a great sense of, you as a leader of one of the large groups of schools in our region, feel very confident, obviously, about the challenges you're dealing with and how you're dealing with them. And I know that you present that strong message of balance very well. So we appreciate the great things you're doing for our community. And as you've led this, you're now leading this huge, really part of our community with these students and families. If there was one thing or two things you think that maybe the community just isn't aware of what the diocesan schools are all about, or maybe a misnomer, anything you'd like to share?
Yeah, I'm sure people have seen a lot of our schools, in their neighborhoods. And I think it's just important to know that our schools, we are Catholic schools, so that is our primary mission of our work, but we do offer great education at our schools, and we welcome everyone. So our schools are very welcoming communities, and even for families who may not be Catholic, who are interested, the doors are open for you too. So it is a really great place, and we really strive to live our values of caring and for one another, and even our local communities. And so we like to work with everybody who has an interest in that.
Well said, and thank you for your 2 decades of education work, and I'm sure it'll be a long time in the future, and your great impact to the community. Can only imagine what Northern Kentucky would be if we didn't have the Catholic Diocese really supporting the schools like you do. So thanks so much, Superintendent McGuire, and wish you the best of luck as we get through this pandemic.
Thank you. You too. We appreciate I appreciate being on today, and and sharing, and we continue praying for everybody that we can get through this and have a nice, good end to our school year this year. So
you bet.
Good. Thank you.